The rich aroma of vanilla and butter filled my kitchen as I pulled another batch of perfectly golden cookies from the oven. My phone buzzed on the counter, a number I hadn't seen in 18 months. Lincoln. My hands trembled as I set down the baking sheet, memories flooding back like spilled milk across a counter. I'm Roslyn, and until last year, I was Mrs. Lincoln Wilkins, wife of the most promising entrepreneur in 3 counties. Now I'm just Roslyn, owner of Sweet Revenge Bakery, though the revenge part is still my little secret. Roslyn, please don't hang up. His voice was different, desperate, lacking that smooth confidence that once made my knees weak. What do you want, Lincoln? I kept my tone flat while sliding cookies onto a cooling rack. I need your help. Things haven't been going well. I almost laughed. Like when you told me I was too small town for your big dreams. That kind of not well. I deserve that, but please, can we meet? For coffee? My sister Noelle chose that moment to burst through the kitchen door, arms full of empty delivery boxes. Roz, we need another dozen chocolate chip for the... She stopped short, seeing my face. What's wrong? I held up one finger. Lincoln, I have customers waiting. I'll think about it. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking worse now. Noelle set down the boxes and gripped my shoulders. Tell me that wasn't who I think it was. He needs help, I said, reaching for my piping bag. Focusing on swirling perfect rosettes helped steady my nerves. Karma's funny that way. Funny like your secret ingredient in these birthday cakes that have made you famous. Noelle grinned, swiping frosting from a bowl. Stop that, I swatted her hand. And there's no secret ingredient, just 18 months of working my ass off, while certain people assumed I'd crawl back to my parents' house and cry forever. Marquis, my business partner, appeared in the doorway. Orders are stacking up, ladies. What's the hold-up? He paused, studying my face. Okay, who died? Lincoln called, Noelle announced before I could stop her. Marquis' eyebrows shot up. The same Lincoln who said you'd never amount to anything. That you were holding him back? I nodded, piping faster. The very same. Apparently his big city dreams aren't so dreamy anymore. Good, Marquis declared, grabbing an order slip. Let him suffer. Meanwhile, we've got that charity fundraiser next month to plan. The one that's going to put Sweet Revenge on the map. I froze mid-pipe, an idea blooming like yeast in warm water. The fundraiser. Marquis, you're brilliant. Obviously. Why specifically this time? Lincoln always said I thought too small. What if we invited him to be our guest speaker? The successful businessman sharing wisdom about rising from humble beginnings? Noelle caught on immediately. While you stand there as living proof that humble doesn't mean worthless. Oh, sister, that's delicious. It's perfect, Marquis agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face. The whole town will be there, all the people who watched him walk away from you like you were nothing. My hand steadied completely as I finished piping the cake. He doesn't know about the bakery, about any of this. He probably still pictures me crying into my pillow every night. Instead, you're crying all the way to the bank, Noelle said proudly. Your waiting list is 3 weeks long. The bell chimed up front. Marquis headed out to handle customers, while I stared at my phone, Lincoln's number still displayed on the screen. You're not actually considering helping him? Noelle asked softly. I picked up the phone. Actually, I am, just not the way he's hoping. I typed quickly, coffee tomorrow, 9 a.m., at Bella's. His response was immediate. Thank you, Roz. You won't regret this. Oh, I don't think I will, I murmured, reaching for another piping bag. Not at all. Noelle hugged me from behind. Whatever you're planning, I'm in. After what he did to you, to all of us, he deserves a taste of his own medicine. I smiled, remembering how Lincoln had dismissed my baking as a cute hobby when I'd suggested starting a business together. How he'd laughed at my provincial dreams while chasing his big city ambitions. How he'd left me with nothing but a heap of debt and shattered confidence. Sometimes, I said, placing the finished cake in a box, The sweetest revenge is served with a side of frosting. The rest of the afternoon flew by in a whirl of orders, deliveries, and planning. By closing time, my mind was made up. Lincoln wanted help. I'd help him all right. Help him understand exactly what he'd thrown away. I locked up the shop, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tomorrow, I'd face Lincoln across a coffee shop table. And for the first time since he'd walked out, I wasn't afraid. I had something better than anger now. I had a plan. Bella's coffee shop hadn't changed. Same rustic wooden tables, same oversized windows, same memories of Lincoln telling me over breakfast that he needed more than this small-town life. I arrived early, choosing a corner table where I could see him coming. He walked in at exactly 9, and my heart did a traitorous little flip. Lincoln looked different, his designer suit replaced by wrinkled khakis and an untucked button-down. The confident stride was gone, replaced by something almost hesitant. "Roslyn." He stopped at my table, hands shoved in his pockets. "Thank you for meeting me." "Sit down, Lincoln. You're blocking the sunlight." He settled into the chair across from me, eyes taking in my appearance. I'd dressed carefully, crisp black blazer, subtle makeup, success written in every detail he'd never expected to see. "You look amazing," he said softly. "What do you want?" The waitress appeared before he could answer. After ordering black coffee for him, vanilla latte for me, Lincoln leaned forward. "My company's failing," he admitted. "Everything I built is crumbling. Ezekiel, my partner, he took everything. The contracts, the clients, even my team." I stirred my latte slowly. Karma's interesting that way. "I deserve that. But Roz, I need help. Alone, maybe, or..." "Alone?" I couldn't help laughing. "With what collateral? The house you sold without telling me? The savings you emptied?" His face flushed. "I know I hurt you." "No," I cut him off. "You don't know. You have no idea what it was like, discovering the account's empty, having my credit cards declined at the grocery store, watching my family scramble to help me pay rent while you chased your dreams in the city." "I was wrong," he whispered, "about everything, about you." My phone buzzed. A text from Marquise. "Everything's set for the fundraiser. Just got the mayor's confirmation." Looking at Lincoln's desperate face, I made my decision. There might be a way I can help. Hope lit his features. "Really?" "I'm involved with a local business initiative. We're having a fundraiser next month. Influential people, potential investors. You could speak, share your expertise about rising from humble beginnings." "A fundraiser?" His brow furrowed. "Here? In town? Unless that's too provincial for you." He flinched at the word, his word thrown back at him. "No, I'd be honored. Thank you, Roz." "Don't thank me yet." I stood, dropping cash on the table. "I'll have my associate send you the details." Outside, I called Marquis immediately. He took the bait. "Of course he did," Marquise laughed. "He's desperate. But Roz, are you sure about this? Making him the keynote speaker?" "Trust me, I want him center stage when everything comes out." "Speaking of everything," Marquis paused. "Ezekiel called. He's willing to share some interesting information about Lincoln's business practices." My pulse quickened. "Set up a meeting." That afternoon, I threw myself into baking, trying to quiet the storm of emotions Lincoln's appearance had stirred up. Noelle found me surrounded by cookie sheets covered in flour. "Stress baking?" she asked, picking up a warm chocolate chip cookie. "Plotting baking," I corrected. "The fundraiser menu needs to be perfect." "As perfect as the speech you're planning?" I set down my mixing bowl. "I found our old journal while cleaning yesterday. Remember how we used to write everything down, including the night Lincoln told me I was embarrassing him at business functions? Because you talked about wanting to open a bakery." Noelle's face darkened. "I remember wanting to punch him. Well, now he gets to stand on stage and talk about success while I serve desserts from my thriving bakery. Desserts he once called quaint little hobby projects." "You're not just planning to serve desserts, are you?" I smiled, reaching for another batch of dough. No, I'm planning to serve justice. With a side of perfectly decorated petits fours. The bell chimed, and Valentina burst in, waving her phone. Roz, you'll never believe what I just heard. Lincoln's back in town, and he's practically broke. I know, I said. He's going to be our keynote speaker at the fundraiser. Valentina's jaw dropped. You're kidding. She's not, Noelle grinned. My sister's playing chess while he's still figuring out checkers. The whole town will be there, Valentina mused. Everyone who watched him walk away. Everyone who helped me rebuild, I added. It seems fitting they should all witness what happens next. Which is what exactly? Valentina asked. I pulled a perfect tray of cookies from the oven, their edges golden brown, their centers slightly soft, exactly the way Lincoln used to love them. Let's just say, I smiled, some things are worth waiting for, like proper revenge and properly baked cookies. The three of us laughed, and I felt the last traces of this morning's anxiety fade away. Lincoln might have walked into Bella's thinking he could manipulate me again, but he'd walked into something else entirely. My trap was set, and he'd taken the bait. Now, all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to serve him his just desserts. The diner where I met Ezekiel was nearly empty, just a few truckers nursing coffee at the counter. He sat in a corner booth, looking exactly like the kind of man who'd destroy Lincoln's company. Sharp, calculating, and completely unapologetic. Roslyn, he stood as I approached. I've heard interesting things about your bakery. And I've heard interesting things about Lincoln's downfall. I slid into the booth. Let's skip the small talk. Ezekiel smiled, sliding a folder across the table. Everything you need to know is in here. Bank statements, emails, contracts he forged. I flipped through the papers, my hands growing cold. He was embezzling. Among other things, your ex-husband had quite the talent for creative accounting. A waitress appeared with coffee. I waited until she left before asking, Why are you showing me this? Because Lincoln screwed me over too. Ezekiel's smile turned hard. And because I heard about your fundraiser, it would be unfortunate if these documents became public during his speech. My phone buzzed, Noelle calling. Excuse me, I said, stepping outside to answer. Where are you? She demanded. Roberto's here with the event layout plans. Meeting Ezekiel. Noelle, it's worse than we thought. Lincoln wasn't just bad with money. He was stealing it. Silence then. Get back here, now. 30 minutes later, I spread the documents across my office desk. Roberto whistled low as he read, while Noelle paced behind him. That bastard, she spat. All those times he made you feel small for wanting your own business, and he was nothing but a common thief. Roberto looked up from the papers. This changes the whole event strategy. We can't just embarrass him anymore. This is criminal. Which is exactly why we need to be careful, I said. One wrong move and this could backfire spectacularly. Or, Noelle stopped pacing, it could be perfect. Think about it. He'll be on stage, talking about success and integrity. While we project his actual bank statements behind him, Roberto finished, catching on, the contrast would be devastating. My hands shook as I gathered the documents. I need to think. This is bigger than just revenge now. Roz, Noelle's voice softened. Remember the night he left? You were so broken you couldn't even cry. You just sat there staring at nothing while he packed his bags and lectured you about ambition. I remember. Then remember what he said about your dreams, about how you'd never make it without him. Roberto stood, spreading the event layout across my desk. The stage will be here, screens behind it. We can time everything perfectly. Let him dig his own grave before we bury him in truth. A knock at the door made us all jump. Marquis poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but Lincoln's on the phone. He wants to discuss his speech. Perfect timing, I smiled, reaching for the phone. Hello? Roz, I've been thinking about the fundraiser. What exactly should I focus on in my speech? I caught Noelle's eye as I answered. Oh, I think integrity would be perfect. How important it is in business. How it builds trust. Right, yes. Good angle. He paused. Listen, Roz, I've been wanting to tell you how sorry I am about everything. Save it for the speech, Lincoln. I'm sure everyone would love to hear about your journey. After hanging up, I sank into my chair. What am I doing? This isn't just revenge anymore. This could destroy him. Good, Noelle said firmly. He deserves it. Does he? I mean, yes, he's awful, but... Roberto laid a hand on my shoulder. Roz, this isn't just about you anymore. Think about all the people he hurt with his schemes. They deserve to know the truth. My phone buzzed again. A text from Valentina. Venue confirmed. Deposits paid. No turning back now. No turning back. The words echoed in my head as I walked through the bakery later that night, after everyone had gone. In the quiet, I found the old journal I'd mentioned to Noelle, flipping to the entry from the night Lincoln left. He says I'm not enough, I'd written. That my dreams are too small, too simple, that I'll never be more than a small-town nobody. Anger flared fresh as I read those words, not just at Lincoln, but at myself for believing him, for letting him dim my light for so long. I pulled out my phone and texted Ezekiel. Send me everything, every last detail. His response came immediately. Now you're thinking like a businesswoman. Setting down the phone, I walked to my test kitchen. The specialty cake I'd been working on for the fundraiser sat in perfect layers, waiting to be assembled. Each tier would represent a different phase of success, from humble beginnings to sweet victory. Lincoln would never know that each beautiful layer contained the evidence of his crimes, printed on edible paper, hidden beneath fondant and flowers. The truth, quite literally, wrapped in sugar. Sometimes, I whispered to the empty kitchen, the smallest dreams turn out to be the biggest victories. I picked up my piping bag, ready to work through the night. The fundraiser was 2 weeks away, and every detail had to be perfect. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore, it was justice served sweet. The community center buzzed with activity as we set up for the fundraiser's rehearsal. Valentina directed volunteers hanging banners, while Roberto tested the projection system. My display table stood center left, perfectly positioned to watch Lincoln's downfall. The timing has to be exact, Marquise said, clicking through slides. When he starts talking about integrity, that's when we'll... Roslyn. Lincoln's voice made us all freeze. He stood in the doorway, earlier than expected, looking around with obvious disdain. This is... quaint. Lincoln. I forced a smile. You're early. I wanted to get a feel for the space. He approached the stage, his old arrogance seeping through the desperate facade. Though I'm not sure this venue really suits the message. Marquis tensed beside me, but I touched his arm. And what message is that? Success, ambition, thinking bigger than... He gestured vaguely. All this. Roberto coughed loudly from the tech booth. Sound check in 5 minutes, everyone. Lincoln turned to me. Who's actually attending this little... event? Oh, just the mayor, 3 state representatives, and about 200 local business owners. I watched his expression shift. Plus the regional business journal is covering it. The journal? His eyes widened. You didn't mention press, didn't I? Must have slipped my mind. Valentina appeared with a clipboard. Mr. Wilkins, we need you on stage for lighting tests. As Lincoln followed her, Noelle slipped in through the side door. Everything okay? I saw his car outside. Perfect, I whispered. He's already dismissing everything, just like before. It'll make the reveal even sweeter. Speaking of sweet, she pulled me toward my display table. The cake arrived. It's spectacular. The 5-tier masterpiece stood gleaming under perfect lighting. Each layer told a story. From the simple bottom tier representing humble beginnings to the ornate top symbolizing triumph. Hidden within each slice were the documents that would expose Lincoln's fraud, printed on edible paper. Places, everyone, Roberto called. Let's run through the sequence. Lincoln took the stage, adjusting his tie. Should I use the podium or... Actually, Marquis interrupted, we'd like you to stand center stage. Better for the cameras. And the projector, I thought, watching Lincoln position himself exactly where we needed him. Start with your opening, Valentina directed. About integrity in business. Lincoln cleared his throat. Success begins with integrity. It's the foundation of everything I've built. Behind him, Roberto discreetly tested the first projection, a bank statement showing Lincoln's earliest fraudulent transfers. The numbers glowed clearly against the back wall before fading away. Perfect, Marquis murmured. Suddenly, Lincoln stopped mid-sentence. What's that bakery smell? Oh, I stepped forward. That would be my contribution to the event. He frowned. You're catering? In a way. I gestured to my display. Sweet Revenge Bakery is one of the event's main sponsors. Sweet Revenge. His face paled slightly. That's your business? The one you said would never succeed? Yes. I smiled sweetly. We're opening our third location next month. The silence that followed was delicious. Lincoln stared at the cake, then at me, realization dawning in his eyes. Roz, he said quietly, stepping off stage. Can we talk? Privately? Actually, we need to finish the rehearsal, Valentina cut in. It's fine, I said. 5 minutes. We stepped into the hallway, where Lincoln grabbed my arm. What are you playing at? I pulled away. Don't touch me. This whole thing, the fundraiser, the press, what's your angle? My angle? I laughed. I'm just giving you what you wanted, a platform to talk about success, about integrity. His face hardened. You know something. I know everything, Lincoln. Every forged contract, every stolen dollar. I stepped closer. And soon, everyone else will too. You wouldn't dare. The same way I wouldn't dare start my own business. The same way I'd never succeed without you. Color drained from his face. Roz, please. We can talk about this. We are talking about this. Tomorrow night, in front of everyone who watched you walk away from me. I turned back toward the door. Better make that speech good, Lincoln. It might be your last public appearance for a while. Inside, Noel rushed to meet me. What happened? You look shaken. He knows something's up. I steadied myself against the display table. But he can't stop it now. Roz, Roberto called from the tech booth. Final sound check. I watched Lincoln slink back onto stage, his confident posture now rigid with fear. Tomorrow, he would stand in that same spot and face the consequences of every lie, every betrayal, every dismissive word. You okay? Marquis asked softly. I nodded, running my hand along the smooth fondant of my career-defining cake. Each tier held its secrets, waiting to be revealed. You know what the best part is, I said, watching Lincoln fumble through his speech. He still thinks this is about him. He has no idea that while he was destroying his business, I was building mine. Tomorrow, Noel squeezed my hand. He'll know exactly who the real success story is. I squeezed back, feeling stronger than ever. Yes, he will. The morning of the fundraiser dawned with unexpected chaos. I arrived at the bakery at 5 a.m. to find water seeping under the back door. A pipe had burst in the night. The cake, I gasped, rushing to the walk-in cooler. Relief flooded through me. My masterpiece stood untouched, each tier perfect and ready. Roz? Marquise's voice echoed from the front. Why is there a lake in your kitchen? Pipe burst. Can you call Roberto? We need this fixed before... A sharp knock cut me off. Through the front window's early morning darkness, I saw Lincoln's silhouette. Don't, Marcus warned as I moved toward the door. I have to. I unlocked it, letting Lincoln step into the darkened bakery. We're closed. Roslyn, please. His voice cracked. I couldn't sleep. What you said yesterday about knowing everything. There's water damage to deal with, Lincoln. I don't have time. I'll pay you, he blurted. Whatever you want. Just don't do this. Marquis stepped forward, phone in hand. Should I call security? No need. I met Lincoln's desperate gaze. You'll pay me, like you paid those investors whose money you stole, or like you paid our mortgage before emptying the account. I can explain everything. Save it for tonight. I turned away, reaching for my phone to call Roberto. Your audience is waiting. Damn it, Roz. Lincoln slammed his hand on the counter. You're going to destroy everything. No, I spun back. You destroyed everything. I'm just serving up the consequences. Water continued spreading across the floor as we stood there, a fitting metaphor for the mess Lincoln had created. Finally, he straightened his shoulders, that familiar arrogant mask sliding back into place. Fine, play your little game. But remember, I taught you everything you know about business. I laughed, genuinely amused. Really? Did you teach me how to build something honest? How to earn respect instead of stealing it? He flinched. The only thing you taught me, I continued, was that I'm stronger than you ever imagined. After he left, Marquis whistled low. That man is terrified. Good. I checked my phone. Roberto was on his way. He should be. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations. By afternoon, the pipe was fixed, and the bakery hummed with activity as my team assembled dessert platters. The cake stood ready for transport, each tier a time bomb of truth. Delivery team's here, Noelle announced at 4 o'clock. You sure about the cake setup? Positive. Each tier needs to be displayed separately until the final assembly during Lincoln's speech. Valentina burst through the door. Emergency, the projector's acting up. My heart stopped. What? Roberto's working on it, but... I'm heading over. I grabbed my bag. Noelle, supervise the cake delivery. Marquis. Already on it, he said, coordinating with the delivery team. At the community center, I found Roberto under the tech booth desk, surrounded by cables. Talk to me, I demanded. Minor glitch, he grunted. Backup systems ready if needed. We won't lose those projections, I promise. I checked my phone. 3 texts from Lincoln, all variations of desperate pleading. Delete. Roz? Valentina appeared with a garment bag. Your dress arrived, and the mayor just confirmed she's bringing the state senator. Perfect. More witnesses to Lincoln's downfall. As evening approached, the venue transformed. Fairy lights twinkled, tables gleamed, and my dessert display drew gasps from early arriving volunteers. The cake tiers waited separately, ready for their dramatic assembly. He's here, Noelle whispered at 6:30. I watched through the kitchen door as Lincoln worked the growing crowd, his charm desperate around the edges. He kept glancing at my dessert table, at the cake tiers that held his secrets. Ready? Marquis appeared beside me, holding a tablet with the presentation queued up. Almost. I straightened my dress. Midnight blue, professional, powerful. Just need one more thing. I pulled out the old journal, turning to that final entry from the night Lincoln left. Ripping out the page, I walked to my display and tucked it under the cake's top tier. One final ingredient in tonight's recipe for justice. 10 minutes, Roberto called from the tech booth. The venue was packed now, local business owners mingling with politicians. I spotted Ezekiel near the back, watching Lincoln with predatory satisfaction. Places, everyone, Valentina directed. Mr. Wilkins, you'll be introduced in 5 minutes. Lincoln caught my eye across the room. For a moment, I saw past his facade to the scared man beneath. He mouthed something. Please, maybe, or don't. I turned away, checking the cake tiers one last time. Each perfectly crafted layer held its evidence, waiting to be served to an unsuspecting audience. Just like Lincoln's carefully crafted image, it would all come apart, piece by perfect piece. It's time. Noelle squeezed my hand. I nodded, taking my place by the dessert table. The mayor approached the podium, ready to introduce Lincoln. The moment of truth had arrived, and it was going to be sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor's voice rang out, please welcome our keynote speaker, Lincoln Wilkins. Applause filled the room as Lincoln took the stage. He gripped the podium, his knuckles white. Behind him, Roberto gave me a thumbs up. The projector was ready. Thank you all for coming, Lincoln began. Tonight I want to talk about integrity in business. I nodded to Marquis, who started assembling the cake tiers. Each click as they locked together seemed to echo Lincoln's words. "Success is built on trust," he continued, voice steady despite his trembling hands. "On honesty." The first projection appeared behind him, a bank statement showing massive unauthorized transfers. Lincoln, focused on his notes, didn't notice the growing murmurs from the audience. "Roz," Noelle whispered urgently, "the top tier won't lock." I turned from Lincoln's speech to see her struggling with the cake. The final piece, containing the most damaging evidence, wouldn't align properly. "Let me," I hissed, reaching for it. "When I started my company," Lincoln's voice cracked slightly, "I had a vision of excellence." The projection changed to show forged contracts. People were pointing now, phones raised to capture the evidence behind him. "Just a minute," I muttered, trying to force the tier into place. "It worked perfectly in rehearsal. Is something wrong?" A sharp voice made me freeze. Valentina stood nearby, but it wasn't her voice. An elegant woman in a business suit watched us struggle with the cake. "Technical difficulty," Noelle explained smoothly. "It'll just take a moment to—" "I'm a pastry chef," the woman said. "Perhaps I can help." My heart stopped. She reached for the tier before I could stop her, examining the locking mechanism. Inside, I knew, were printed documents showing Lincoln's biggest fraud, the one that finally brought him down. "Wait," I started, but she'd already turned it over. Papers fluttered to the floor. On stage, Lincoln was hitting his stride. "Integrity means facing your mistakes." "What are these?" The woman picked up a sheet, eyes widening as she read. "Please," I whispered, "it's not what you think." She looked from the papers to Lincoln, then back to me. "Actually, I think it's exactly what I think." A small smile played at her lips. "I'm Catherine Walsh, FDA compliance officer." My legs went weak. This was it, I'd gone too far. Tampering with food, hiding documents in desserts. I'd lose my license, my business, everything. "And," she continued quietly, "I'm also the woman Lincoln stole $50,000 from last year." I blinked. "What?" "Investment fraud," she explained, gathering the fallen papers. "I've been building a case but couldn't prove the pattern." She held up the documents. "Until now." On stage, Lincoln was wrapping up. "Because true success comes from—" "Excuse me," Catherine's voice cut through the room. She strode toward the stage, papers in hand. "Mr. Wilkins, would you care to explain these?" The projector clicked again, showing Lincoln's signature on falsified documents. He finally noticed, turning to see his crimes displayed behind him. That's not—" He stumbled back from the podium. "Federal agents are outside," Catherine announced. "They're very interested in discussing your business practices." The room erupted in chaos. Phones flashed as Lincoln tried to flee the stage, only to find Ezekiel blocking one exit and Roberto the other. "Roz," Lincoln shouted desperately, tell them it's not true." I stepped forward, my voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "It's all true, Lincoln. Every word, every number, every lie." "You planned this," he accused. "You set me up." "No," I said calmly. "You set yourself up. I just baked the cake." Federal agents appeared at the doors. Catherine nodded to them, still holding the evidence from my ruined dessert. "Lincoln Wilkins," one agent announced, "you're under arrest for investment fraud, embezzlement, and wire fraud." As they led him away, Lincoln locked eyes with me one last time. All his arrogance had crumbled, leaving only the truth exposed. He was the small one, not me. "Well," Marquis appeared beside me, watching Lincoln disappear into a federal vehicle. "That didn't go quite as planned." "Actually," Catherine joined us, "it went better. Your evidence combined with my investigation makes this case airtight." She paused. "Though maybe next time, don't hide federal evidence in baked goods." I laughed shakily. "Noted." The crowd buzzed with excitement, phones undoubtedly spreading the story across social media. My revenge had become something bigger, justice for everyone Lincoln had hurt. The cake's ruined, Noelle sighed, looking at the toppled tiers. No, I said, studying the scattered pieces. It's perfect exactly as it is. Sometimes things fall apart so the truth can come out. Catherine handed me her card. The FDA might have questions, but off the record, that was the sweetest takedown I've ever seen. As the excitement died down, I stood in the empty venue, surrounded by the aftermath of Lincoln's final fall. The projector still glowed faintly, casting shadows of his crimes across the floor. Ready to go home? Noelle asked softly. I nodded, gathering my things. Tomorrow would bring questions, statements, probably lawyers. But tonight I'd finally served the justice I'd been baking all along, and it was exactly as sweet as I'd hoped. The morning after Lincoln's arrest, I opened the bakery to find a line stretching around the block. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since last night. Reporters, old friends, even some of Lincoln's former business associates. You're trending, Marquis announced, holding up his phone as he squeezed through the crowd. Sweet revenge is viral. Great, I muttered, unlocking the door. That's exactly what I need while the FDA is investigating me. Actually, he grinned, showing me an email. Catherine sent this an hour ago. You're cleared. Apparently, edible paper isn't technically food tampering. The bell chimed as customers flooded in. Everyone wanted to talk about last night, to hear the story firsthand. I kept baking, letting Noelle handle the curious crowds. Is it true? One woman asked, leaning over the counter. Did you really take down your ex-husband with a cake? Before I could answer, the door opened again. This time, Ezekiel walked in, followed by several people in expensive suits. Roslyn, he called over the crowd, got a minute? I nodded to Marquis to handle the counter and led them to my office. These are investors, Ezekiel explained once we were seated. They're interested in franchising Sweet Revenge. My heart skipped. Franchising? Your story's everywhere, one of the suits said. Woman builds successful business after husband's betrayal, then serves justice at a charity event. It's marketing gold. We're prepared to offer significant capital, another added. Your brand could go national. I thought about Lincoln, about how desperately he'd chased exactly this kind of opportunity, how he'd sacrificed everything, integrity, relationships, freedom for it. Thank you, I said carefully, but I need time to think. After they left, Noelle burst in. Were those investors? Please tell me you said yes. I said I'd think about it. Think about what? This is everything you wanted, is it? I stood, walking to the window. Outside, customers still lined up, phones ready to snap photos of the bakery that brought down a fraudster. Or is it everything Lincoln wanted? The door opened again, Catherine this time, holding a newspaper. You made the front page, she said, dropping it on my desk. And not just local news. This story's going national. I glanced at the headline. Sweet Revenge. Local baker exposes multi-million-dollar fraud. The prosecutor wants to talk to you, Catherine continued. Your evidence, combined with my investigation, has unveiled a larger network of fraud. Lincoln wasn't working alone. What does that mean? It means you didn't just expose one man's crimes. You helped uncover a whole web of corruption. She smiled, and made some damn good desserts doing it. A knock interrupted us, Roberto looking anxious. Roz, Lincoln's sister is here. My stomach dropped. Sarah had always sided with her brother, believing his version of our divorce. Send her in. Sarah looked different, smaller somehow, without Lincoln's influence shadowing her. She carried a familiar box. Your wedding cake, she said quietly, setting it on my desk. Lincoln kept the top tier in his freezer all this time. I stared at the box. Why are you bringing this to me? Because I was wrong. Her voice cracked. About you, about him, about everything. I watched the videos from last night, saw the evidence. She met my eyes. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. The box sat between us, a frozen reminder of promises long broken. What will you do with it? She asked. I picked up the box, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it in the trash. Make something new. Back in my office, Catherine was talking to Noelle about testimony dates while Roberto showed Sarah out. Through the window, I could see Marquis handling the endless line of customers, each one drawn by a story of sweet justice. The investors will be back, Noelle said once we were alone. What are you going to tell them? I thought about Lincoln's desperate grab for success, how it had destroyed him. Then I thought about my own path, built slowly, honestly, one cake at a time. I'll tell them I'm interested, I decided, but on my terms. No rushing, no cutting corners. We do this right. Just like your recipes? Exactly like my recipes. I smiled. Sometimes the best things take time to perfect. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching the sugar crystals in the air and making them sparkle like tiny diamonds. Outside, life went on. Customers lined up, phones buzzed with notifications, and somewhere, Lincoln sat in a cell, finally facing the consequences of his choices. But here, in my kitchen, surrounded by the sweet smell of success, I felt something better than revenge. I felt peace. Come on, I said to Noelle, reaching for my apron. We've got orders to fill. She grinned. Any special ingredients today? Just the usual, I laughed. Sugar, flour, and truth. Together, we walked into the kitchen, ready to keep building something honest, something real, something sweeter than revenge could ever be. Success. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I made my way inside. Lincoln's sentencing hearing had drawn media attention from across the country, but I wasn't there for the spectacle. I was there to close this chapter of my life once and for all. Ready? Noelle squeezed my hand as we found seats in the courtroom. Before I could answer, the bailiff called out, "All rise!" Lincoln shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He looked small now, diminished. His eyes found mine in the crowd, but I felt nothing, no anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. The judge cleared her throat. "Mr. Wilkins, before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say?" Lincoln stood slowly. "Your Honor, He turned, facing the gallery, facing me. I destroyed everything I touched because I was afraid of being small, of being ordinary. But the person I called ordinary built something extraordinary, without lying or cheating." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Roslyn. You were never the small one. I was." The judge nodded. "Mr. Wilkins, considering the extent of your fraud and the number of victims, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison." I slipped out before she finished, needing air. Outside, Catherine waited by the steps. "Quite a statement he made," she said, falling into step beside me. "Too little, too late." "Maybe, but your testimony helped us recover millions in stolen funds. The victims will get restitution." My phone buzzed, Marquis sending a photo of the new Sweet Revenge location sign being installed. The investors had accepted my terms: controlled growth, quality over quantity, and a portion of profits going to help small business owners affected by fraud. "Speaking of business," Catherine smiled, "I heard about the franchise deal. Congratulations." "Thanks, though I'm keeping the original location exactly as it is. Because that's where it all started. Because that's where I learned who I really am." Back at the bakery, I found Valentina and Roberto decorating for a special event, our first small business support workshop. Local entrepreneurs would gather here monthly, sharing knowledge and resources. "Look who's here," Valentina called as I walked in. Sarah stood by the counter, helping arrange chairs. "I hope it's okay that I came. I'd like to learn how to start my own business, the right way." "Of course it's okay." I handed her an apron. First lesson: success tastes better when it's earned. The workshop filled quickly, familiar faces mixed with new ones, all sharing dreams of building something meaningful. I took my place at the front, surrounded by the sweet smell of fresh pastries and fresh starts. "Welcome, everyone. I'm Roslyn, and this is Sweet Revenge Bakery. But today isn't about revenge, it's about resilience." Noelle beamed from the back as I continued. Each of us has a dream that someone else called too small, too simple, too ordinary. Today, we're going to prove them wrong. My phone buzzed again. The investors, probably with more expansion plans. But that could wait. Right now, in this room full of dreamers, armed with determination, and my best chocolate chip cookies, something more important was rising. Now, I smiled, picking up a piping bag. Who wants to learn how to build something extraordinary? Hands shot up across the room. As I demonstrated the perfect frosting swirl, I caught Marquise's knowing grin. He'd been right all along. The best revenge wasn't exposing Lincoln's lies or watching him fall. The best revenge was living truthfully, building honestly, and helping others do the same. Remember, I told my eager audience, every great business starts with a simple dream. The trick is believing in it even when no one else does. The afternoon sun painted the bakery in warm light, making the sweet revenge sign glow like a beacon. Outside, life rushed by. Inside, dreams took shape one lesson at a time. "Roz," Noelle called softly, "you've got flour on your cheek." I wiped it away, laughing. Hazard of the trade. Worth it, though? I looked around my bakery, at Sarah learning to pipe roses, at Valentina sharing marketing tips, at Roberto explaining website design, at all these people turning their small dreams into something real. "More than worth it," I said, reaching for another piping bag. "Now, who's ready to learn the secret to perfect buttercream?" The room filled with eager responses, and I felt it then. The sweetness of true success. Not the kind that comes from revenge or public victories, but the kind that grows from believing in yourself when others don't. That's the kind that lasts. That's the kind that matters. And that's the kind I'd been baking all along.